Pesachim Daf Ein Zayin. Today's email comes from Isaac Marashli. He says he was flying to Florida to meet up with his wife and kids, and he thought he was going to have a quiet flight and chill, in his words. But then he remembered that we were talking about different people that were flying and learning the daf, so he decided he'll also learn the daf on the flight. As he's learning, he notices that the gentleman next to him happens to be Jewish, so he reaches over to him and he says, "Hey, would you like to learn the daf yomi?" And the gentleman says, "Sure." They learned together and they had a great time, and he tried to convince him to be part of the shir, and he says, "Thank you for the inspiration, Isaac Marashli." Beautiful Maisa. Brand new Mishnah, brand new Sugya. The Mishnah tells us that there are 5 karbanos that push off Tumah. That is, if most of Klal Yisrael is Tameh, or most of the Kohanim are Tameh, we bring these karbanos nevertheless. However, unlike a Korban Pesach, when you bring these karbanos, you cannot eat from them. A Korban Pesach is the exception to the rule. The only carbon that you bring it when Klal Yisrael is Betumah, you bring the Korban Pesach, and you get to eat it. The reason is because Korban Pesach, the whole purpose of the Korban Pesach is to eat it. It's not there for a kapara, it's for the eating. What are the 5 karbanos? The Omer, the Korban Omer, the mincha that you bring on the second day of Pesach in order to allow the new crop. Shtei alechem, the 2 breads you bring on Shavuos, they also allow the new crop to be used for menachos. Lechem aponim, 12 loaves of bread that we bake from Shabbos to Shabbos to go to the Kohanim. Shalmi tzibur, the karbanos that go, the shlavim that go together with the shtei halechem on Shavuos. And Seir Rosh Chodesh, these are the karban musaf that we bring on Rosh Chodesh. These things could be brought when Klal Yisrael is in a state of tumah, but not to be eaten. The reason why the Mishnah says 5 is to exclude the 6th one, which is Chagigas Tesvav, the karban Chagiga that we bring on Pesach, Sukkot and Shavuos. It doesn't push off Shabbos, and therefore it doesn't push off Tumah. Even though it's a karban tzibur, so to speak, because Klal Yisrael, each individual brings one, so there are many of them, it's called the karban tzibur, and it has a specific time that you bring it, nevertheless, it doesn't push off Tumah. The seirim that we bring on Yom Tovim are included in the Shalmi Tzibur. So why isn't Rosh Chodesh included in the Shalmi Tzibur? Rosh Chodesh comes to tell us a chiddush. I would think Rosh Chodesh is not a moed, it's not a regal, it's not a chag. And it's because it says moyadechem, as we'll see soon, that's what gives us the heter to bring a betumah. But Rosh Chodesh is not a moed, perhaps. Kamashmal Rosh Chodesh is a moed. Moshe Rabbeinu added another day to make Tammuz a 30-day month. And therefore it came out that when the Meraglim left on Chavta Sivan, 40 days later they showed up in the Midbar. That was Tisha B'Av, the day that Klal Yisrael cried in vain. So they'll cry in vain l'dayres, the 2 churbanos of Beis Hamikdash on Tisha B'Av. It's because Moshe Rabbeinu added another day, and he said Kara Alai Moyed. He called Rosh Chodesh a Moyed. Pesach and Karban Tamid, it says in the pasuk Moyadoi. You must bring him that day, regardless if it's Shabbos, regardless if Klal Yisrael is B'Tumah. Other karbanos, it says Moyadeichem, so they push off Shabbos and Tumah. Karban Omer and Shtei Alechem are not in the parish of Pinchas, so we need a special pasuk for them. It says Veidaber Moshes Moyadei Hashem, teaches us that they push off Shabbos and Tumah. The question is, why do I need all 3 psukim? The Gemara says each one has something special. Karban Tamid comes every single day, it's tadir. Also, it's completely consumed, it's a karban oila. Karban Pesach has kares. All karbanos come for a kapara, and the Omer comes to allow the new crop, and so too the Shnei Alechem come to allow the new crop for menachas. The Gemara tells us a major cheshbon here. The Talmidim thought that Rabbi Yeshua doesn't fit into our Mishnah, which allows to bring these 5 karbanos b'tumah. There's 2 concepts. One is called tumah hutra b'tzibur, and one is called tumah dechuya b'tzibur. The difference is they're very similar, but there's a slight difference. Hutra means there's a complete blank slate. You're allowed to do whatever you want. The Torah is materit, and it's completely mutter. You don't have to look for any aterim. You don't need any kapara. Dechuya means it was pushed off, but we need a kapara. How do you get this kapara? How do you achieve a kapara? Through the tzitz of the Kohen Gadol. However, the problem is the tzitz of the Kohen Gadol, the chayre, the Gemara thought, doesn't work for food. Okay. Rabbi Shua says in order to get a kapara, you need to have both the food, the meat, and the blood not tameh. Well, if the food cannot get a kapara through the tzitz, so you only have blood that has a kapara, not the meat. And therefore, you cannot bring this carbon. If you can't bring the carbon, he doesn't fit into the Mishnah. The Maskana, the Gemara tells us, the Rabbi Shua fits in very well into the Mishnah. The Mishnah is talking about a karban tzibur, which Rabbi Shua agrees that you bring betuma. He just says that a carbon for a yachid you don't bring when you're tamei lechatchila, but if you do bring it after the fact, b'diavad, it's okay. According to Rabbi Yehuda, he's the only person that holds tuma hutra b'tzibur. Rabbi Shua tried to prove to him from a kohen gadol on Yom Kippur who doesn't wear the tzitz. You're not supposed to wear gold on Yom Kippur, and it's meratza. The tzitz is meratza even though he's not wearing it. And Rabbi Yehuda replied to him. He said, "Tuma hutra. It's not true. It's because the tuma becomes completely mutter, and I don't even need a tzitz." So you see, he's the person that holds. He's the Tana that holds hutra b'tzibur. According to Rabbi Yeshua, the pasuk says, "Abasar v'adam." You need both meat and blood that are tar. According to Rabbi Lezer, the pasuk says, "B'dam zivachecha." All we care about is the blood. The fact that it says "Habasar v'adam," says Rabbi Lezer, we learn from that not only do you throw the blood on the mizbeach, but you also take the imurim and you toss them onto the mizbeach. In fact, there was a gap between the ramp of the mizbeach and the mizbeach to show the kohanim stop right there. From that point on, you toss it. What does Rabbi Yeshua do with dam zivachecha? He says, well, the pasuk right away says basar, says dam and basar. So why does the same pasuk say dam and basar twice? One is for oila, one is for shlamim. Oila has its chumrah, it's completely consumed. Shlamim has its chumrah, it's eaten twice, once by the mizbeach and once by the owner. Rabbi Lezer says, well, I need habasar toichal to teach us that the blood comes first, in that part of the pasuk, to teach us that you throw the blood first, and then you get to eat the basar. Rabbi Yeshua says, I could learn that from a Kal V'chomer. Before we said the maskana is that our Mishnah could go like Rabbi Yeshua, and Rabbi Yeshua is talking about our Mishnah is b'tzibur, Rabbi Yeshua is talking about a yachid. The Gemara had 3 other attempts, and we'll go through them really briefly. The first attempt was that perhaps the tzitz gives a kapara not for the meat, but the imurim that go on the mizbeach. And like this, will satisfy the pasuk habasar v'adam. The basar is referring to what goes on the mizbeach. The Gemara says, well, that doesn't work very well for the omer and shtei alechem, and we see that Rabbi Yeshua says specifically that even the omer and shtei alechem require both, so to speak, the basar and the dam of the omer and the shtei alechem for the ritzui. So the Gemara made another attempt that perhaps, according to Rabbi Yeshua, the tzitz is in fact meratza for food. But Rabbi Yeshua says specifically that the tzitz is not meratza, not for what goes on the mizbeach, and not for what you eat, the food. Third shot the Gemara wanted to say is that our Mishnah is talking about b'diavad, after the fact. If you went ahead and threw the blood, then we'll allow it. And Rabbi Yeshua is talking about lechatchila. If you come to ask a Rav, are you allowed to throw the blood in a state of tumah? The Rav will say no. However, that doesn't fit into the lashon of the Mishnah, because the Mishnah says chamisha dvarim ba'im. You could bring them lechatchila. Have a wonderful day.